Okay, welcome back to part two of McTaggart's The Unreality of Time. Just to refresh our memories, McTaggart proposes a very interesting argument. According to his argument, time is unreal because nothing can exist in time. His argument essentially is that when we think about time, there are two properties, the A properties and the B properties. In other words, the A properties of time are that events start in the future, move down to the present, and then disappear in the past. So they keep changing. If you think about it, the Civil War, for example, at one point was future, then it became present, and now it's past. On the other hand, there are B properties, and the B properties do not move that way. They stay fixed. Any perspective, any point of view that you look at these properties, they will always be fixed. They will always be the same. For example, my lecture is part two of this lecture is later than part one, and it will never change. It will always be the same for eternity. It's fixed. Okay, so essentially, what is the argument? The argument, remember, is a very simple argument. Nothing really has any A-series properties. Past, present, and future. So in other words, no event in time is past, present, and future. And you're going to say, correct. But the point is that every event in time, according to McTaggart, is past, present, and future. But that's impossible. And so the conclusion is that nothing exists in time. Now, remember, the objection was, no, that's false, because events don't have past, present, and future at the same time. Events are, and that's difficult, you see, for this objection to articulate how the objection should run. So if events do not have past, present, and future at the same time, what are they? What properties do they have? Well, the objection goes that an event is past in the past in the present, or past in the future. Or you can say an event is past in the past. It's only past in the past. It is present in the past, or it is future in the past. Okay? But when you take any of these series, these properties, what do is you avoid a contradiction, but then you generate another contradiction. And the contradiction is that no event can be past in the past, present in the past, and future in the past. You still have three properties. So it doesn't remove the contradiction. Nothing can be past in the past, present in the past, future in the past. But then the other objection says, no, but that's not what I meant. What I mean is that an event, each event has all these properties at some time, not always. This, however, by this objection, however, we are not going anywhere. We're not removing the contradiction, because this type now of objection implies a third level. So you remove the first contradiction and the second contradiction, but now you have a third contradiction, that any event is, for example, past in the present in the past, or past in the present, or past in the present in the future. So any way you slice it, events always have three properties. You are not able to separate them, and as I suggested, you are not able to separate them because which point of view is the point, the right point of view from which we look at events. Any event can be past, present, and future. There's nothing special. There's nothing that has privilege about judging an event from the present time, or from the past time, or from the future time. So so essentially, McTaggart anticipates that kind of objection and shows that that objection doesn't work, because you can always come up with a different level of properties, and you have to remove that level. And to remove that level, you have to say that that an event is past, in the past, in the present, in the past, in the future, and so on. You will never remove the contradiction. So the only response here at this point would be the following. One might point out the following. Look, this is very frustrating. So when I said that events don't simply have the A series properties, but rather they have these properties, each property, at some time, not always, not at the same time. I didn't mean to replace past, present, future with past in the past, past in the present, past in the future, or past in the past, in the past, past in the past, in the present, and so on. But then, what did you mean? How are you going to explain how events don't have all three properties? Well, the only solution is to say that the properties that events have are this kind of property. That's what I have in mind. So, for example, civil war has the property of past relative to the January 1st, 2019. Okay? We all agree that that's true. And so what's the problem with that? This property doesn't lead to a contradiction. It's not contradictory to say that the Civil War has the property of pastness relative to 1/1/2019. So voila, it is not true that every event has all the properties. Okay. Obviously, by this objection, you apparently remove the contradiction. And you block the infinite regress of past, present, and so on. However, we don't get rid of the contradiction. Or I should say, we might get rid of the contradiction, but then we generate another contradiction. And well, not so much a contradiction, but we have to face a problem that if we say that any event has only one property, and that property is a property relative to a certain date, what we're doing by doing that is that we are giving up the A series of time. We're giving up the idea that events in time move around, move in a line, in a timeline, from future to present to past. Or in other words, by denying this, we deny the A series of properties and we endorse the B series. Okay? Remember, the B series is essentially this, described here, that relative to this date, say Civil War is past, and that's it. That's the only property that Civil War has, relative to that property. But that's the B theory of time, isn't it? Because it says that events are fixed in a relationship of later than and earlier than. What's the problem with that? Why not think that just let's give up this idea of the A series and endorse B series? What's the problem with that? Then time has that feature. Yeah, but the problem is that we don't want to give up the A series, because if we do, we have to give up the notion that events exist in time. See, premise 2 says, if nothing really has any A series properties, then nothing exists in time. Time requires change, and change requires the A series. The change of events that we experience require that time has A properties. With B properties, time would not exist, and events would not exist, would be fixed, would not change. Let me quote what McTaggart says here. He says, take any event. That's funny. The death of Queen Anne, for example, and consider what change can take place in its characteristics. So in other words, with the B theory of time, if we argue that time has B properties instead of A properties, then what exactly changes in an event like the death of Queen Anne? He continues that it is a death, that it is the death of Anne Stewart, that it has such causes and that it has such effects. Every characteristics of the sort never changes. Okay? The fact that it's a death, that doesn't change it. The fact that she has a name, that doesn't change. So what is it that changed? Well, the event in question was a death of an English queen. At the last moment of time, the event in question will still be a death of an English queen. And at the last event in time, her name was still the same. And in every respect but one, it is equally devoid of change. So nothing changes about that event. What changes? It began by being a future event. At last it was present, then it became past, and will always remain so, though every moment it becomes further and further past. Okay? So in other words, change requires the A properties, not the B properties. The B properties are fixed. There's no change in the B properties. Only the A properties enable you to have change in time and events to pass and to change. But since events clearly change, so you have to deal with this paradox. Events really change. But at the same time, they cannot have the properties of past, present, and future all at once. That's a puzzle. So how do you explain this? You can't explain it by saying time has the B properties, because the B properties do not allow change. And we do experience change. So the only solution for McTaggart, as you can see now, is to conclude that time doesn't exist. Okay? So, again, the only genuine series is B series of time. You can say that. But objects still change, since change implies for an object to have different properties at different times. One apparent consequence of the B theory is eternalism. Remember, we talked about it. Talked about eternalism. The view that the past and the future and present events exist in just the same way as the objects and events in the past, present, and in the future. So an event that happened in the past is as real as an event that happens in the present, and an event that will happen in the future. But this is not possible. Or at least this is clearly impossible, because that's, first of all, that's not what we experience, and events don't exist at the same time. Some events exist, some events are in the past, some events don't exist yet because they are in the future. So the B series of time is very controversial. And even if it did exist, it would be fixed, time would be fixed, and we would not experience that change that we experience. But because change requires A properties, but A properties cannot be had by the same event all at once, the only solution is that time doesn't exist. So think about eternalism. The eternalist makes a point about the now. Now doesn't exist. So the denial of a series properties is like the denial that there is any genuine property of here-ness. There's no such thing as here-ness. No event in time is privileged. No event in time is here. It is present. It is now. The now doesn't exist because every single event in time has the same value. It is as now as anything else. So summing up, McTaggart gives us the following argument against the reality of time. Nothing really has any A-series properties. If nothing has really any A-series properties, then nothing exists in time. Therefore, nothing exists in time. So if one believes that things really do exist in time, and if you believe that things really exist in time, you must reject one of the premises of this argument. But which premise are you going to reject? There are two opposing views of time that we defined, remember. And depending on which theory of time you endorse, you will reject that premise. So the A theory of time rejects the first premise and holds that events do have A properties, like being present. But as we saw in the argument, it's a problem for the A theory of time because, according to the A theory of time, the problem is that every event has present, past, and future at the same time, and that is not possible. Okay? It's a contradiction. On the other hand, the B theories of time rejects the second premise. Second premise being that nothing really has A-series properties, then nothing exists in time. Okay? And holds that the absence of A-series properties need not count against the reality of time. The problem with this is that if you deny the A properties, then you deny that there is change, and everything is fixed, and it's related in a relationship that never changes. There's no moving of events in time. And also, as I said, this leads to the controversial position that I described earlier of eternalism, which is the view that there's no here, there's no now, but the world is one whole. It's like a block, and every event in the block have the same value. They're all as present as any event is as present as now as any other event. They all exist on a timeline. And this is very difficult to maintain. Okay, so the conclusion is that the A series are inherently paradoxical. They produce a contradiction, and consequently, they cannot correspond with reality. Reality requires change, but change cannot have, so events that change cannot have the properties of the A series. But without these properties, you don't have any change. So what's the solution? Well, the only solution, as crazy as it may sound, is that time does not exist. Time is unreal. So either time is real, but there is no change, or time is unreal and there is change. And that's the only way that you can produce change. Well, once again, this is the end of lecture 2, part 2 of the lecture on time. This is the end, not of time. And once again, I'm looking forward to hear your thoughts, to read your questions, to read your answers to my questions in the discussions board. Till then, have a great day, and I'll see you for the next lecture. Thank you.